Everyone, I would like to welcome you today. My name is Bob Carpenter, Director of Community Relations. I'd like to welcome you to our Northeast State 50th Anniversary Storytelling Festival here today. I'm sure we'll hear some of those, and I'm sure they won't let us down. I'm going to turn it over to Ray Allen, who's our moderator for today, and he'll introduce our guests, and we'll go from there. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Carpenter, and my welcome as well. Appreciate that. I feel honored about it. I feel awed because I feel like a schoolboy again sitting in front of his heroes here. These they weren't my teachers. I knew them or knew of them anyway. And Dr. Owen I got to know as probably the one student that he put up with, and gave me something to do. I guess just so you would have something to put up with me. I appreciate that, but I do appreciate the opportunity, and I look forward to this. And thank Dr. Gillum and her staff and all the preparations going into this, all the thoughts of all this 50th anniversary year. Dr. Owen just said that he didn't know of anybody that's done this before. College spending a whole year celebrating their 50th anniversary, maybe just one or two events. And Dr. Gillum has a vision of that, and I'm sure mentioning of her, of course, each of us have her master and her thoughts and prayers right now and things that she's going through. But appreciate the opportunity, and just going to go down the line here and let them introduce themselves, and I guess you can tell how you came about being here, of course, or whatever you want to say in introductory remarks here. Of course, this is Dr. Owen. I thought of it as the first president after Dr. Pierce, but they reminded me Dr. McNutt was in there.
She was the interim
there for a little bit, but I came as a student when Dr. Pierce was still president, and I guess he overlapped into your presidency there, and I get to know you better than I did Dr. Pierce, but always a pleasure to be around you. I always felt honored to be in your presence, and I still do. Like I said, I still feel like a little schoolboy, and I feel out of place here, but a lot of us have made a circle around here, and now I'm back here as an instructor. But I wouldn't have had that chance if it hadn't been for you all. And the groundwork that you all laid and all the preparation, we wouldn't even have a 50th anniversary. It hadn't been for your all's vision and your hard work and dedication and what you all did for me and all the other hundreds and even thousands of students that went through here. And I just want to say right off, thank you. Go ahead, Dr. Owen, I'll let you start.
Well, it's an honor to be first. Would you, one of you fellas like to be first?
Go ahead. You have the right.
About 33 years ago, I came to Tri-City State Tech, and I had known C.C. Humphreys from Nashville, who was a chancellor, and also Mr. Roy Nix, and had been familiar with the state of Tennessee through my work with the Commission on Colleges of the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools, where I had worked for 4 years out of Atlanta, including the state of Tennessee. And so I had the opportunity to come to Tri-City State Tech in the summer of 1983. It was a great opportunity for me because the State Board of Regents had just assumed the governance responsibility of the institution, and what we were required to do, the faculty and staff were required to do, was to adapt to the rules and regulations of the State Board of Regents. And that was new for everyone because they had not experienced that before. We had to develop programs. We had to do what was necessary to gain our accreditation with the Commission on Colleges, which we had been working on it here since 1980, but had not achieved that because the institution kept changing its name, kept changing which way it was going, and when the Board of Regents came, we were the only institution under the board that was not accredited. So we had to do that, and I said by next year we're going to be accredited. And in December 1984, we had the opportunity to be recognized as a member of the Commission on Colleges, which was a great accomplishment. The faculty and staff have done a super job adjusting to the new changes in the rules and regulations, and we had an opportunity to really move up from where we were. When the institution started, Tom Jarrell was there, and the first classes in 1966, I believe there were about 35 students. And for us to come back as faculty and staff and see where the institution has come in the last 3 or 4 decades is truly amazing. I'm glad to have an opportunity to be here with you and to participate in one of the activities of the 50th anniversary of Northeast State. Thank you, Ray.
Yes. Mr. Hall, were you a student in the original class? One of the first students here?
Yeah, started in the fall of 2000.
And then came back later as an
1966.
instructor,
Yeah.
up to associate professor before you retired. Go ahead and tell your part, please.
Well, when I graduated from high school, I was wanting to go to UT and really couldn't afford it. You know, it wanted to be in agriculture, but one of my friends stopped by and told me, he said, you need to get up to school. The class is going to fill up. I said, you need to get that drafting class. So we had drafted in high school together, went to Holston. And so I came up and started in my class. And Mr. Pierce, of course, didn't like beards, and so we had to shave. We had Mr. Geyer was my instructor in the tool design. It wasn't drafting at the time; it was tool and die design. We had to wear a tie. Couldn't have any face hair, and we had to mop and keep our room clean. I mean, we had to do that was part of the scheme of things, is that we had to keep our room clean, and so we done all the mopping and the waxing in the room. We talked today while we were having lunch. The drafting program at the time, it's like I say, was tool and die design, and we we spent 4 days a week in in the drafting room, and then on Friday we'd go back into the machine shop, and Tom was the machine shop instructor, so all the drafting students would go back, and we got to take our ties off. It was just such a thrill that day to be able to wear blue jeans and take our ties off, and we'd go back in the machine shop, and the fellas and the people in the machine shop would come to drafting. And, at that time, it was like it was a vocational school. It was an area school, and I think we had to get 2,640 hours of to get our diploma, and 640 of that came from the machine shop. We had our own math in the classroom. We'd have a morning. We'd come in at 8 o'clock, and we have a little skull session, talk about everything we'd done the night before, and then we would we'd draw a little while, and then we'd have our math, and then the rest of the day we'd do the drafting part. Everybody had the opportunity in drafting to go to work at Raytheon, and Wayne can tell you some about that. But anyway, all the drafting students and the machine shop students went to Raytheon at the time. That was during the Vietnam War era. We made bomb fuses and missile parts and whatnot. So my start in this whole scheme of things was taking that drafting class. All I had when I came to work here, I volunteered for layoff at Raytheon, and I went to ETSU for a while in pre-engineering. So I had a bunch of the related class type work, and so that's all I had when I came here was just my diploma. And as I was teaching one day, I heard one of the girls in the class say, "Well, he don't even have as much education as we're getting." And so I just hit a nerve, and so then I got my Associate of Engineering from the school here. I went ahead and got it. And then after that, I got my BS, and then I got my Master's. And so I worked my way up through it. So I worked 33 years, and then I retired, and now I just take care of my sheep and my cows and my horses and animals.
Mr. Gerald, you were, if I remember the story right, you're the first one Dr. Pierce hired.
First instructor hired. I've been accused of being older than dirt, and so I tell them about how it was back in '01, and '01 being the first day of the school. But actually, the school concept started in '63. The state had a concept of vocational education, vocational technical education for every resident in the state of Tennessee to live within 30 miles of one of these training centers. And so the school facilities were built. Every one of us had industrial experience. And the concept was it makes more sense to take a craftsman and give him teaching skills, make a teacher out of a craftsman. It's more efficient to do it that way than to take a teacher and try to give them technical skills. So that was the concept early on. And along that concept was also we were to teach students, individuals, for employment rather than teaching a canned content. So the philosophy from before the facility was ever built was that to prepare folks for employment. The building, the land was acquired from the Wagner farm. There's a dairy farm, about 13 acres originally here. The Wagners did not want to turn loose of their farmland, but public domain requiring it, the state prevailed, and the Wagners were satisfied. So the facilities were built. Jim Pierce, who was the first director president, himself was retired lieutenant commander out of the Navy. He was also a home builder, home construction, and he actually interviewed me. He took time off from a job that he was building a house for Dr. Nicely in Bristol. I was interviewed in the parking lot of a business off of Weaver Pike there in Bristol in the fall of '65. And so I seemed to be what he was looking for in the way of a machine shop instructor. So my start date was to be January 1, 1966. Actually reported to work on January 2nd because New Year's Day being a paid holiday for state employees, it's going to be a good job. Paid a holiday before I even work a day. So, that worked out well. I was here for 34 years before retiring, effective January of 2000. So a lot of changes based upon leadership of not only Jim Pierce but Dr. Owen. The school has always been blessed with positive thinking leadership. And if you look back, you'll see a major growth, not only in physical facilities, but in student enrollment and faculty. Every 5 years, there's been a major expansion to the point what the school is today. Of course, back in '66, we had no idea that it would become a community college. But when I came in on January the 2nd, the machine shop was one big shop area there, 40 by 80 feet in size, cinder block walls, did have a concrete floor, no office. There was a little restroom over in the corner. I was given a list of tools, machine tools, that was going to be shipped in from Nashville. So I started laying out where we would set this equipment and get it all in place. And so it took from January 2nd until April. Our first students actually came in April of '66. They were still in high school, and they would come in half a day. And that's when the driveway up from Airport Road 75 here was just more mud than gravel. And oftentimes in April, why it would be so muddy, the students, we had 7 of them that was going to start in the machine shop. They would park over at the Methodist Church over here. And so I had this little Ford pickup with the big tires on the back. And so I'd pick the students up in the back of the truck and then haul them up this muddy driveway to get into the back of the machine shop. And so we felt like that we were pioneers or homesteading this vocational enterprise here next to the airport. That's what we were referred to, the school, the vocational school next to the airport. And that's when the Tri-Cities was a lot smaller than it is now. And later on, I talked with folks over in various Johnson City, Kingsport, or Bristol about coming out to Northeast State. And, oh, my, that's 15 miles out in the country, you know. You can't drive that far to school, you know. But that's the way we started. And but the philosophy from the very beginning was preparing people for industry, preparing people to go to work, preparing them for a job. And as a result, that sort of had a mushroom effect in that we were not only preparing the individuals for employment, we were providing a workforce for not only existing companies, but it was an attractor to companies outside of the area that wanted to relocate to Tennessee. Tennessee became a destination state for business. And so that concept just continued to grow. So it's the school from the very beginning has been a positive thing for the citizens and the economy of the Tri-Cities. So I just happened to be in on the front end, and so I had the opportunity to watch the school grow, and so really proud of facilities, and still the same concept continues today in faculty, and the reputation grows, and my chest swells when I hear someone brag about the quality of education that they're getting at Northeast State. Any questions?
Mr. Feathers, you didn't get to serve here as long, but you have just as many stories, and this is interesting a start here. Go ahead.
Oh, we could tell a lot of stories about the school, but my association with the school has not been as long as most of these gentlemen here today. My first association with it was in 1966 in Tom's class, and I was a student. Came back and worked as an instructor until about 73. But my connection with the school was similar to Alex. We had heard they were building a school at the airport. That's all we knew about. Well, my parents were self-employed and had a small restaurant up in the Blountville area. And one of the instructors here at the time was Mr. Geyer, and he was Alex's instructor in tool design. And he stopped in my dad's restaurant coming down the old 11 highway and down through the airport highway to come down to the airport to work. And he'd stop in every morning and get him a cup of coffee and a donut. And my dad, being very inquisitive, I used to accuse him of running off more customers than he kept. was asking him one day what he did, where he was going, and so forth. Well, I had mechanical drawing in high school, and that had always interested me. I wanted to be an architect. And somehow there was a connection. Someone contacted my parents, and there was a school at that time in Nashville called Drone School of Drafting, or Drone School. Did a lot of vocational or technical stuff. And they had signed me up to go to school there. Well, my dad was always frugal, and when he found out about a school down here at the airport, and Mr. Geyer was teaching, he called it tool design. We didn't know what that was. He came to me and he said, would you be interested in taking tool design? And I thought, well, I don't know how to me, tools were a hammer and a saw. So I thought, how do you design a better hammer, or how do you design a better saw? And so they scheduled a time for me to come down for an interview, and I think I talked to either Mr. Pierce or Tom Halls that was down here at the time. And they kind of told me what they had in the design class, and that piqued my interest a little bit. And as Alex said, you spent on Fridays, if you were in drafting class or tool design, you spent Fridays in machine shop. If you were in machine shop, we were also to have some drafting class, so we switched classes. And so they said, would you like to just come down? We don't have an opening in tool design, but we do have opening in machine shop. And if you could come on in, start the machine shop, because like we said earlier today, they were trying to get a full enrollment for the fall. And I had just graduated high school in 1966, and I had laid around the house probably long enough, and I started the school down here in August the 31st, 1966. And I was a little bit like Tom. I think we started on the 31st, and wasn't it Labor Day the next day? We were all out of school for Labor Day. And I kind of felt like you did. Oh, this is pretty good. We just go to school one day and you get out today. And so anyhow, I was involved in machine shop, and I took a little bit of the drafting as I went along. And whenever there became an opening in tool design, I had already fallen in love with machine shop. And I said, no, I'll just stay in machine shop. And even what time we were here, the state offered they were doing Tom knows more about it than I do probably, an experimental program where they selected students from all the different vocational classes, and we were sent to Oak Ridge for 14 weeks. We worked there in the Union Carbide plant. It was Oak Ridge Associated Universities in connection with the University of Tennessee. It was a program that they had. And because of the school here, we participated in that. Alex did also. And so we came back and we finished school, and as he said, I was able to go to work at Raytheon. They offered us, the school, a special program to go to school because of the vocational school here, that we could work 30 hours a week because we were going to school, and that way we went in at the regular 4:30 time is Raytheon's time to start work, and got off at 11. And so I worked there through, after I finished school, I stayed at Raytheon. And we were working as MTOs, machine tool operators. But because of the training that I had gotten in the machine shop, there was an opening came available in the tool room, which is what we were actually trained for, to be tool and die makers. And so I went into that department, and I worked there until the layoff time came, and we took a voluntary layoff and left that. So I was out of work for a little while, and came down one day how I got involved in the teaching aspect of the school. I came down one day to see Tom about fixing a part for a car. I had something that needed to be made, and he said, well, he was preparing to go into supervision. They were hiring a new instructor, Mr. Elmer Beavers. He was an elderly man, probably about our age now. And,
Probably.
but he was not one that.
He's younger than we are.
He was a good craftsman, but he was not interested in much related arts. And so they would need an assistant instructor. And as Alex referred to, the hair, facial hair, and so forth, I remember I came down, I had a beard then also, and I probably looked pretty rough coming in. And Tom says, well, now if you go home and clean up and shave and come back and talk to Mr. Pierce, there's this job available. So I did. I went and cleaned up and came back, and I remember going in the office, and Mr. Pierce told me what the job was, and I said, well, I'd like to make application for it. And he just reaches in, is it Miss Byers? Mm-hmm. She's the secretary then, Miss Byers. I think Patty was down here then too. And Miss Byers pulled out about a 7-8 page application, because now that's, I'm sure it's all done down here. If you apply, you're going to be on a computer. But sent down to the office occupations lab and said to get out an old typewriter. No, we were still using old typewriter. And fill out the form. Well, I did, and cut to the chase. I got a call and came to work as assistant instructor. And what time I was here, I was assistant instructor during the daytime with Mr. Beavers, and taught all the related arts classes and the shop math and that. And also, Tom was involved in the night classes, and he hired me to do some night class work. So I taught some blueprint reading and some shop math and other stuff like that at night. So I worked here till, like I said, the fall of 1973, and due to a lot of prodding and begging by my father, I left the teaching profession and became self-employed. I was a merchant, had convenience 7-Eleven stores for about 28, 29 years. I sold those a few years ago, and I'm currently the owner-operator of some storage facilities in the Bluffville area. But I've seen the school grow. It's just amazing as you drive by. Whenever Robin called and asked if I could come down for this, and I know we were to meet at the library. I'd never been on the campus probably, I know, since the library was built. I just had no reason to be down here. And so one Sunday, my wife and I drove down to find the library to see where we could park, and it brought back some old memories. And the same thing today. When I pulled in the parking lot, I thought, where am I going to park? I mean, the parking lot was full, and I thought, well, I'll park over here in faculty parking. I thought, well, I'll probably get a ticket for that, but then I tell them, well, they can just take it off my next month's tuition or something. Then I thought I might get towed, so then I moved. There was a visitor spot, so I moved over into visitors. But it brought back a lot of memories, because as I pulled into park, the old building up here on the upper side is, I was not as early as Tom. We had rock when I came to school. And so we just parked outside the back door. But I appreciate you inviting me down today, and I'll shut up now.
Mr. Cartwright, you had 27 years total, I guess.
Correct.
10 years in technology side, and then you switched sides on us.
10 years in automotive service technology and 17 in economics. I came to work in July of '82. Tom Jarrell hired me. It was to be my 5th job in 3 years. I was in a miserable dead-end job, and it came the day that I got the job offer, and Tom wrote on a piece of paper and said, we might have a problem here. He said, this is all I can pay you. It's more than I was making. And I looked at that and I said, well, you know, Tom, there comes a point in every man's life where there are things that are more important than money. I was hoping you'd say that. And those of you who know me know I could walk to my home. Well, the time I drove home that day, Mr. Pierce wasn't here the day you hired me. Well, the paperwork went down to Iris Hoffarth. She called Mr. Pierce to say that I was coming to work. I got a $500 raise from the time I left campus till I got home. And there again, it's, man, I'm at the right place. But my first day on the job, Tom took me around, and I got to sit down and talk to everybody that works here, or worked here. That shows you how small we were. But part of the deal, when Tom hired me, was that I would take 5 courses in tech and adult education. Now, man, this is going to be a mess. That started me. I ended up with a master's. Then I got certified to teach in economics. And it was wonderful because you didn't have to pay to go to school. Everybody encouraged you during your office hours. You could study, so it was a great deal.
Good place to work.
And one of the joys to me is to be out and see former students and see how well they have done and what they contribute. Don't need a super soaker, do you, Tom? When I was here, those of you who know me know I have a total aversion to meetings. And I was late for class one day because the meeting had run long. And as I walked in, I just commented to this one student, I wish I had a super soaker, I could end it at meeting. And she gave me a big super soaker. So you don't have to squirt.
Dr. Owen mentioned the deal with the SACs, Southern Accreditation of Colleges and Schools. And I guess that's when me as a young, probably immature and happy-go-lucky kind of guy for a student, that's when I started realizing there's a lot more to education than, I enjoyed the classes and I tried to work hard at it. But I started seeing what you were doing to drive us with the SAC steering committee, getting us approved and accredited. And then I started noticing all the hard work that everybody else had to put on to it. And you did your duties, teaching us and training us and keeping everything else going. But then, it's like you set that job aside and took on a new job in the afternoons, doing this SAC steering committee deal to get us approved. And that's when I started realizing, wow, these people really care about the students. They really cared about the school, and they got a lot of vision, and I don't know how much of it really sunk into me at the time, but I know I started getting impressed with it. I got to sit on some of the steering committee meetings as a student, I guess they call me some kind of student representative, I don't know what the title was, but I was really impressed, and I thought, okay, these people care for us and love their job to a point to where they're going to all this extra duty, extra hours just to get us through this. You don't care to take a minute or two and just share what it was like with those days to get through all that?
Well, our leader was Earlene Odell.
Yes.
She put things together. But there were so many other activities going on at that time because of the new governance structure with the State Board of Regents that people had to do items with their classes. They had to they had to prepare contracts and grants. I mean, that first to second year, we had about 15 different contracts and grants that provided personnel, that provided equipment, that provided materials, and faculty had to continue to, teach their classes. So you have to look back and see the total picture of what was going on. And this was an additional function that was, placed on people to become members of the Commission on Colleges. And I was just so impressed how people could, do this with their right hand and this with their left hand and get through it. But the dedication that faculty and staff and students showed was just, unbelievable. Really thrilling.
Yes. And you too, Mr. Gerald, you had a lot to do with that too, as far as
Yeah.
division chair.
It was, and it's almost like all of us were here for the time that was needed. I know Dr. Owen, I can't imagine anybody that more expertise in getting an institution accredited by the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools than he. And if you look back, we all had an important role to play at that particular time in the development of the school. let me digress just for a little bit back to early days. I'd mentioned that we were preparing individuals for employment, and every program early on, even before we started classes, had a advisory committee made up from individuals from industry, and that helped develop the curriculum, tweak the curriculum. We had a core curriculum that we were to start with, but we fine-tuned it to what was needed here in the Tri-Cities. And one of the things I sort of still laugh at, and I mentioned, the Jim Pierce being the director that he was, early on, he determined that since we were preparing students for industry, we would adopt a snow policy, cancellation policy, similar to what industry had. And Eastman being the largest employer in the area, whenever Eastman closes, we'll close the school. Well, to my knowledge, Eastman has never closed their doors on account of inclement weather, so we never did either. So we had students driving over from Shady Valley, Mountain City, Irwin, Hawkins County, wherever, and they knew that classes would go on. We didn't cancel any classes, and that was part of their training. You've got to remember, too, that back in '66, this was not too far removed from the hippie movement out in San Francisco and California. And so we were the backlash of that, I guess you might say. The pendulum swings. And so the instructor at that time pretty well had autonomy in their program. And whatever that instructor has established as ground rules was the way it was. And of course, we in the machine shop required students to be clean shaven, no hair over their collar, and so everything went along well for a while. Students were very devoted. They were serious. They recognized the opportunity that was here for them. They applied themselves. Discipline was non-existent until one of the best students I ever had was this gentleman sitting right here, Wayne Feathers. Oh, he loved machine shop work. He applied himself and did everything just the way it's supposed to be done. Until he came in one Monday morning, a weekend's growth of beard on his face. We always had a little classroom for our first hour, and so then we go out and shop and put into practice what we talked about in the class. And so I got the opportunity to go over and talk with Wayne one-on-one, and what's with the beard? How come you didn't shave today? I'm going to grow me a beard. Oh. Well, as I recall, it's about 50 years ago now, I said something to Wayne to this effect. Well, Wayne, I'll tell you what. I'm going to give you an hour or two to go home and get that off your face. And if you be back here by lunch, we won't have any lost hours on your record. If you can't do that, just don't bother about coming back. He put his tools up and said, all right. And I've never told him this until this morning. Oh, man, I sure hope he comes back. I've had some good students in the machine shop come through. I can't remember any that was ever any better than Wayne Feathers. I mean, he loved it. He was well adapted for it. He had the natural talent, and I just saw a great. He's gonna make me look good if he graduates, and I was really tickled when I saw him come back in after lunch, and that was. You remember some things like that, you know. So I remember that. So.
Remember the spring, I forget what we called them, like a spring festival day or something.
Spring fling.
Spring fling. We had a lot of fun on those days, from Duncan booths to everything else. But I remember the tricycle races too. And then you all get some kind of competition trying to design the fastest.
Oh yeah. Tell them about that, Dick.
Well, it was my idea. And we all had these little tricycles, and if you don't know Ray Phillips, you've missed one of the greatest competitors ever.
Who's that?
And he came in with a tricycle with a platform on the back and wore me out. Then the next year, I brought in a ringer.
Of course, these tricycles, you know, they had to be beefed up for these old long-legged instructors, you know, and because they just weren't built that way. So you had to modify them just to get them to be strong enough.
Well, I was at home. You didn't let anybody see your tricycle. I built mine at home. And Sunday afternoon, I was going down the driveway trying it out, and my wife and my daughter were there watching me. And my daughter looked up at my wife and said, "What are you going to tell him when you take him to the emergency room?"
Wreck on his tricycle.
Yeah.
My granddaughters get a kick out. Joe Tennis wrote a updated version of History of Sullivan County. And so the girls like to go over to Mr. J's bookstore in Johnson City, and they came across this History of Sullivan County, and lo and behold, their grandpa's picture is in that history book. And so now, if you don't think that'll make you feel old. Of course, I was 28-year-old when we started, so do the math. So.
You were talking earlier about this brand new fancy computer system we got. Spent $100,000 on it,
Yep.
I think you said. But I can remember when we had to share a printer, and hopefully nobody changed the number on it by the time you went back to, to your, I don't even know what we called it back then. It wasn't desktop, but it just, whatever the computer was.
Microcomputer.
Yeah. And if somebody changed the number on it to select their printer, and select the printer of their computer, then you just had to wait again. But then I also remember when you all got a copy machine in the classroom building. And that was, that seemed to be an experience too. I remember some of you wanted to get here early on, something ring a bell. Some of you trying to get here early, you might have 15 pages to go, 15 copies to make, but you get behind somebody like a Chuck Evans who always copied a book or something in her class. And but I think of those days too, and realize what we have today and what we get to enjoy today.
And I can remember when the engineering instructors were so excited that the pocket calculator, engineering calculator, had now dropped down to $600, and couldn't imagine them getting any cheaper than that. Here they were, pocket calculator.
Spend $250 more and you get that little printer attachment that gives you about an inch wide printout. Remember that? But I don't know how y'all did it. Today we rely upon this technology, and y'all didn't have that. And we're privileged today of having the staff that we do, and y'all seem to do a lot. I don't know, I guess I'm jealous. You seem to do a lot more with a lot less staff and a lot less technology.
Well, Patty Parker was always fussing at me for getting my grades in. I was always the last one to get the grades in, and because the problem was they had no computers. They had to do it by hand.
She's called Parker now. Oh.
Chandler.
Any other stories y'all like to share? And you all were reminiscing quite a few there a while ago.
I'd like to share with you one. My students, they had to wear ties every day in class. So I had, when they come to class and they didn't have their tie, then I had a tie that had a big Indian on it. and they call it my Indian tie. And so if they didn't come to school with their tie, then I'd have them to wear the Indian tie. And so when they'd come in, they'd say, "Oh, Mr. Hall, I forgot my tie." And I'd say, "Well, let me get my Indian tie." And they'd say, "Just stop me a couple hours. I'm gonna go home and get my tie." They didn't want to wear that Indian tie.
Yeah. Patty came to work as our evening secretary in the fall of '66. So
No, don't make me know.
when was it?
About 12 and 66.
I thought you were 3.
No, I kept March 68.
'68. Oh, I'm sorry.
She was here though.
You were a student.
Yes,
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that I was asked earlier today was, what is a very important thing that you can say that you remember about your time at Tri-City State Tech? And I said, well, very much we were like a family. We cared for one another. We didn't treat people as a number, but as an individual. Now, that also may apply if they didn't follow Tom's rules in class. But, you know, the faculty are the key to the institution. You know, the dean or the president can do this or that, but if it's not done in the classroom by faculty who care, you know, it's not done the way it needs to be.
I also recall what Mr. Pierce commented, the ship goes the way the captain steers.
That's true. That's true. We've got to wrap up here pretty soon. He's talking about leaving a student somewhere. That's a different story. But it reminded me of a time we were talking about some of these school trips, and Mr. Hall, you said you got a little bit reluctant about taking some students sometimes. But I remember one time, I don't know how I got on this trip. It was your all's department, but you allowed 4 of us to come from the electronic side to fill up the bus, I guess. I don't know. But you took us to Charlotte, North Carolina, to a machine tool show over there. And this would have been 84 or something, I don't know, 85 something. And but then the weather got bad. We couldn't come back the way we went, you know, through Johnson County and all that. So we had to go up through Withville, take the interstate, come back that way. We got in late that night. And we stopped at a Western Sizzling. And me and Mr. Gerald, because this is one of the things I remember about you. Western Sizzling was one of my all-time favorite places to eat. I wish we still had a steakhouse. And but I'd only taken enough money with me. Here I am, a college student. I'd only taken enough money with me for one meal, and I spent that at McDonald's in Charlotte. But to stop at Western Sizzling, you know, that's a big treat. I guess I forgot my senses or something. I went ahead and ordered and ate like I normally would, you know, hamburger, steak or something. Then we all got in line to pay and get back on the bus. That's when I realized I didn't have any money. And so I tapped the buddy in front of me, and he said, "I barely got enough to pay for me, you know." And I thought, they're going to have to leave me here and wash dishes or something. Well, Mr. Gerald was behind us, overhearing the whole thing. And he called me by my name. I don't even know how he knew my name. I guess I was that much of a troublemaker or something. But he said, "Ray, you need some money?" He gave me a $5 bill. A $5 bill buying a Western Sizzling meal. That's pretty good. And he gave me a $5 bill, loaned it to me. When I came back the next day or after the weekend or whatever and paid you back, but that just proved what you said there. We're more like a family that y'all cared, and you were looking after us when I didn't have enough sense enough to bring enough money for a trip like that, and then you still cared enough to, I guess you had enough money to pay mine and yours too. But
He could have paid for everybody.
I always appreciated that.
One blistering on trailer.
And now here I am. I get the privilege of being an instructor as well. And you all have left a legacy that's almost impossible to live up to, to be quite honest about it. And I'll say it again. I said it in the lunchroom there a while ago, at the start of the meeting. It's an honor to me. I feel like a little schoolboy again, sitting amongst my heroes, listening to you, and I'd like to go on the rest of the day with it. But just to hear you all talk, Dr. Owen, you came with your wife or something, introduced your wife.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Miss Leah Owen.
My wife Leah.
And, they traveled 5 hours one way just to get here. And,
And bad weather too.
bad weather, yeah. And this was originally scheduled 3 weeks ago, I think,
Right.
and we had to postpone it because of the snow then. So appreciate you all and your flexibility there, coming out and sharing the time. And the school would not be here today, doing what it's doing, if it hadn't been for these 5 gentlemen and others like them, and Ms. Poteet, Ms. Chandler, and Mr. Wallace, others here that's been here through the years. I say again, it is a hard legacy to live up to, and I appreciate it. And I just want to see if any of you had any closing comments here before we wrap up the lunch hour.
Most of us just loved their job, you know, cared
Yeah.
about the students, loved their job.
Well, Tom
That's
used to
probably the
refer to
biggest
my
reward.
automotive shop as my indoor playhouse.
My wife always accused me of never going to work. You're just going to where to play. So. If I could leave one thought, one word, attitude is everything. If you've got the right attitude, you just can't give enough. The more you give, the more it comes back. So stay positive.
I would like to say something. Mr. Gerald here is, I think of, when I think of even Northeast State, that's the man I think of. I guess because he was here from the beginning. The professionalism of any of the other any instructors that I ever came in contact with down here was an example for us as a young man. You know, starting out, maybe a little bit rebellious about that, but I probably went and shaved that day because I didn't want to disappoint Tom. I know the first time I saw him, I walked into class, and here was a man in a white coat. I'd never seen anybody in a white coat except in a hospital. And here he was in a machine shop. Was never a piece of oil or anything that I ever saw on that coat. But he did the work. He was well liked by, I think, everyone that come in contact with him. And I could see how he worked from being hired as an instructor on through into supervision. Because I think he always was a man that I looked up to, with the exception maybe of my parents. He probably had as much to do with the way my life turned out as anybody I know. And that all came from this institution down here. And I just hope that as it continues to grow, and I think it's going to be bigger and bigger, and we talked about earlier today how they've got different campuses in different areas. Just something there to provide the young people and young adults and even older adults in this area to prepare themselves for what they have to go through. And I'm just thankful. Unlike Tom, I'm a person of faith, and I'm just thankful that this school was here at the time it was, so that it affected my life quite a bit. And I appreciate being invited down today and see some old friends and made some new friends. And I was kind of afraid of Alex. Used to, every time I saw him, regardless of wherever it was, he'd just pick me up off the ground and shake me. And I kind of dared him. I said, I don't think you'll pick me up and shake me today. But he said he could. So, but again, thank you very much.
What was that little quip you said there a while ago? You almost became brother-in-laws to Mr. Cartwright?
Oh, no, we will not talk about that.
No. Some clauses need to be left
That's
closed.
right. That was just a slip of the tongue, should have never been mentioned.
There was one instructor, the first automotive instructor that we had was Lloyd Hash, and Dick just told me a while ago that Lloyd died just recently at age 99. And Lloyd was from the old school, as you might imagine. Lloyd required his automotive students to wear white coveralls. And of course, immediately he got asked by everybody that walked in, why do you have your students wearing white coveralls? He said, simple. So they can tell how dirty they are. White doesn't get any dirtier than any other color, but it sure does show it. So Lloyd had worked at dealerships and said those mechanics would wear them till they was greasy. They'd stand in the corner, and he wanted the students to know how dirty they were getting. And so they had part of their requirement from day one is to have 2 pair of coveralls. One was in the laundry, and they would wear a pair for a week, and then they come in on Monday with clean coveralls. Now, they might still be some grease stains on them, but they were clean white coveralls. So.
I never did like him too much. I drove up here and left my lights on, the battery run down. I went back and I said, Mr. Heish, I said, you got any jumper cables? And he said, yes, I do. And I said, can I borrow him? And he said, no. And I said, why not? And he said, I don't loan them. And I said, but I'm going to have to get to work. And he said, next time you'll remember to turn off your lights.
You did. You remember it to this day.
Yeah, I'd never leave my lights on. Yeah, he was a really good fella. He really was.
Yeah, he should have been here today.
Yeah, I wished he was.
I guess you could tell from a white overalls who's doing the work too.
Oh, yeah.
The student might be
Yeah,
slipping
he wasn't
off
getting
a
dirty.
little.
He wasn't doing anything.
I'll say something too to that. He always came across real gruff,
Oh, my.
but he had a heart. He had a real tender side.
Yeah.
When I was working one time as an instructor, we'd sit out on the bench and have lunch. And I liked Mr. Hash. I think most everybody did, but he did have that gruff exterior to him. And you'd think he just kind of a hateful old man, about what you'd think. We were sitting there eating lunch one day, and he said, "I want to show you something." And he took off one of his shoes. And he had a toenail that was about that long. Did you know that? And he said, every day when I go in, my cat comes in and rubs against my feet. And he said, I'm going to cut that nail because that way the cat can get in there and rub his neck real good. Now, there was the soft side of Mr. Hayes. The soft side.
I had never heard that.
You're still able to finish your lunch.
We were through lunch.
I had a preacher friend of mine. He had the expression, teaching is not a display of knowledge, it's a transfer of knowledge. And I always think back to my instructors here, that's exactly what you all did. You weren't trying to put on a show, you weren't trying to put on a performance. You're just trying to train us as best as you could, and equipping us with what we needed. And you always did an excellent job at it. And again, I just want to say thank you. And I feel like if any of you rubbed off on me, I'm to the better of it. I'm the benefactor of that. And what I've learned from you, just being in your presence and getting to be with you and getting to have the instructors I had, I wouldn't want to trade any of them. Well, let's see. No, I wouldn't want to trade any of them. I want to say thank you for coming here, and thank you all for listening to their reminiscing here and sharing their stories. And most of them, you know what they're into now. Dr. Owen, I'll give you the privilege here. You want to have a closing remark or something you want to say, please?
Well, I just had the privilege of moving the ball along in the history of the institution for about 4 years. And one of the things I was thinking of the other day was in 1984, the State Board of Regents required us to do a facilities master plan. And they also had a 5-year strategic plan. And I served on the committee that worked on that. And they were trying to identify the relationship between technical institutes, community colleges, and universities. And they needed some help with that in terms of some distinctions. And as we put the language together, this institution is where it is today based upon the language of that 5-year strategic plan, things wouldn't have happened. And I was looking at, there were like 12 or 15 points, and they dealt with technical institute facilities, technical institute equipment, the role of the community college, how the university was different from the community college, how we changed the admission requirements to the university so that they were more difficult, and this put more people into the technical institute and community college. And many of the things that we are seeing today occurred during that 5-year strategic plan and facility plan. And it's just thrilling to see the outcome of where we are today.
Again, thank you, gentlemen. I've said it twice before, I'll say it again, we wouldn't be here today and enjoying the growth and what we sustained today. It's all because of y'all and the groundwork that you did and your continued efforts to support us. And thank you again for coming back here today.
Thanks for inviting
Y'all
us.
give them a big hand, please.